You're nothing but a weak, pathetic excuse for an expert, Judge Taryn Harrison hisses, looming over Dr. Amara Collins like a storm about to break. His gavel slams down mere inches from her hand, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the hushed courtroom. The bailiffs move in swiftly, gripping her arms, but Amara doesn't flinch. She straightens her spine, every inch the composed, unstoppable force she is. Judge Harrison steps forward, deliberately crushing her meticulously organized case notes under his polished shoe. His breath grazes her ear, hot and threatening. "Next time," he whispers, venom dripping from each word, "send someone worthy of my courtroom." Dr. Collins meets his gaze, eyes smoldering with quiet fire. 3 words escape her lips. The effect is instantaneous. Judge Harrison staggers back as if struck. His face drains of color, a tremor rattles his hand resting on the bench. The courtroom collectively inhales, sensing that something seismic has just occurred. Earlier that morning, Dr. Amara Collins had arrived at the Baltimore County Courthouse 40 minutes early, sunlight glinting off her Harvard Medical School pin, a small emblem of 2 decades of unrivaled excellence in neurology. Her tailored blazer hugged her frame perfectly, exuding authority and elegance. She reviewed her notes one last time, every line, every statistic, every clinical precedent sharp in her mind. The plaintiff's attorney, Sandra Weiss, approached with a relieved smile and a firm handshake. "Dr. Collins, thank you for coming. Your expertise is going to be crucial in proving the hospital's negligence." Amara allowed herself a slight smile. "The MRI results speak for themselves. The patient deserved better care." They stepped into courtroom 4C, where the plaintiff sat nervously at the front table. Dr. Collins offered a reassuring nod before taking her seat, calm and collected. A beacon of certainty in the room. The defense team arrived in a swarm of tailored suits and confident smirks. Their silver-haired expert, Dr. James Phillips, received immediate nods of deference from the staff, a visible contrast to the scrutiny awaiting Amara. At precisely 9 a.m., the bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Taryn Harrison." Judge Harrison entered like a shadow in motion, his black robe trailing behind him with almost theatrical authority. At 63, he was a man whose reputation preceded him. Fair but merciless, respected yet feared. His practiced gaze swept the room, lingering on Dr. Collins. Something subtle flickered across his face. Curiosity, skepticism, maybe even a hint of unease. During introductions, he dissected her credentials with the sharpness of a scalpel. Harvard Medical School, board-certified in neurology, numerous publications. Yet his eyes narrowed. "How much actual clinical experience do you have, doctor?" 20 years, Your Honor," she replied evenly, her voice calm but carrying a quiet weight that filled the courtroom. "Over 3,000 cases similar to the one before the court today." Harrison grunted, unconvinced. Then the defense introduced Dr. James Phillips, and the entire dynamic shifted. A smile spread across the judge's face, warm and approving, a stark contrast to his icy reception of Amara. Pre-trial motions continued, a pattern emerging. Interruptions, dismissive gestures, subtle power plays, all directed at her. Meanwhile, the defense team was treated with uninterrupted courtesy, nods, and approval. Dr. Collins remained poised, pen gliding across her legal pad, documenting every slight, every smirk, every tilt of the judge's head. She saw it all, remembered it all, and stored it away, not a single detail wasted. She was ready. And the moment she spoke those 3 words, everything would change. Weiss leans closer during a brief recess, her voice low and apologetic. "I'm sorry about this. Harrison, he has a reputation for being old school." Dr. Collins gives a calm, measured smile. "I've noticed," she replies evenly, her eyes scanning the courtroom through the half-open door. "But don't worry. I've faced this type of behavior countless times throughout my career." What no one in that courtroom realizes is that Dr. Collins's patience has been honed into something sharper over the years. Bias, skepticism, microaggressions, they've all become tools she understands how to wield. And soon, a familiar name on the court docket will connect to a chapter of her past capable of shattering Judge Harrison A.'s carefully maintained facade. The trial resumes. Opening statements are brisk, yet charged with tension. Dr. Collins sits at the witness table with perfect posture, a composed storm barely restrained beneath her calm exterior. When Weiss calls her to the stand, Judge Harrison's thin-lipped frown tightens, a subtle warning that he intends to control the room. "Dr. Collins, please state your qualifications for the record," Weiss begins. Before she can speak, Harrison interjects, sharp and cutting. "We've already established the witness's background during pre-trial. Let's not waste the court's time with repetition." Sworn in, Dr. Collins feels the oath's weight magnified under Harrison's icy stare. Weiss guides her through her testimony. Her voice is precise, her words carefully chosen, radiating authority. The MRI clearly showed early signs of pressure on the spinal cord that required immediate surgical intervention, she states. The 12-hour delay violated basic standards of care protocols. Harrison shifts in his seat, eyes narrowing. "Dr. Collins, please remember this is a courtroom, not a lecture hall. Keep your answers concise." The defense attorney rises for cross-examination, predatory and aggressive. "Dr. Collins, isn't it possible that reasonable medical professionals might interpret these MRI results differently?" "No," she says firmly, unwavering. "The imaging shows unmistakable compression at the C4 to C5 level. Any qualified neurologist would—" "Objection, Your Honor," Bedford interrupts, exuding controlled irritation. "The witness is speculating about other doctors' opinions." "Sustained," Harrison rules instantly, his gavel a whip crack of authority. "Dr. Collins, stick to what you personally know, not what you believe other doctors might think." When she begins to explain the universal standards for interpreting MRI results, Harrison cuts her off again. "The jury doesn't need a medical school lecture. Doctor, answer the specific questions asked." Amara adjusts. Her words become leaner, more precise, but every ounce of substance remains intact. When she references peer-reviewed research validating her stance, Harrison sighs audibly, irritation leaking through his composed mask. "Is this academic paper directly relevant to this specific case, doctor?" he asks, voice laced with barely concealed contempt. "Yes, Your Honor," she replies, steady and unwavering. "This research established the current standard of care." "Move on," he snaps. "The jury needs practical information, not theoretical research." Throughout the relentless questioning, Dr. Collins maintains her composure, her professionalism unshakable, even as Harrison's hostility escalates. During a particularly technical explanation, the judge glances at his watch with exaggerated ostentation. "Perhaps we should break for lunch before Dr. Collins continues with her extensive explanations," he says, prompting uncomfortable laughter from the gallery. Even as murmurs ripple through the room, any objectors are swiftly silenced with threats of contempt. During recess, Dr. Collins steps into the quiet hallway, inhaling deeply. Around the corner, she catches fragments of Harrison speaking to Bedford. "These academics think they know everything," he mutters, voice low but venomous. "Especially the ones with something to prove." Amara retreats, silent and deliberate. Her hand retrieves her phone from her bag. She slips into an empty conference room, closes the door, and dials a number from memory. The moment it connects, her voice shifts, cool, commanding, unmistakable authority. "This is Collins. I need everything on Judge Taryn Harrison's judicial record, especially cases involving female expert witnesses." She pauses, listening. Then she adds with precision, "Also, pull the ownership records of Bedford Holdings from 2018 to present. I suspect our judge has connections he hasn't disclosed." A voice asks for authorization. Without hesitation, Dr. Collins delivers a code that sets a silent chain of events into motion, an unseen machinery of accountability beginning to hum under her control. The afternoon session loomed like a storm about to break. Dr. Collins returned to the stand, her posture impeccable, her calm veneer unshaken despite the morning's relentless barrage. The plaintiff's attorney guided her through the critical findings that made the hospital's negligence undeniable. Dr. Collins, could you explain how the delay in treatment directly impacted the patient's prognosis? Weiss asked. She nodded, assembling her words with measured precision. The 12-hour delay allowed the spinal compression to worsen, resulting in permanent nerve damage. Objection! Bedford's voice cut like a knife. Speculative. Sustained, Judge Harrison intoned without hesitation. Weiss frowned. Your Honor, Dr. Collins is establishing causation based on medical evidence. She's offering conclusions beyond what the evidence supports, Harrison countered smoothly. Continue, counselor, but with more restraint. For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Collins's testimony was systematically undercut. Every critical point she made, each reference to the patient's deteriorating neurological exams, was interrupted. Harrison's gavel fell like a hammer, halting her mid-sentence again and again. Dr. Collins, are you trying to instruct this court on legal matters now? He sneered. Stick to what you supposedly know. The word supposedly hung in the air like a slap. Weiss objected instantly. Your Honor, that comment impugns the witness's credentials. Overruled, Harrison said, waving her protest away. Counsel, control your witness. Dr. Collins drew a slow, deliberate breath. Her voice remained steady. If I may clarify the medical progression documented in the records. The court doesn't need clarification, Harrison interrupted, dismissive. The jury understands the timeline. She pivoted, citing 3 recent medical journal publications that corroborated her stance on the hospital's breach of standard care. Harrison waved his hand dismissively. The jury will disregard references to unverified research. Bedford pounced. Isn't it true your most recent publication was rejected by the Journal of Neurosurgery before being accepted by a less prestigious journal? Objection! Weiss barked. This line of questioning is irrelevant and harassing. I'll allow it, Harrison said, leaning forward with keen interest. The witness's professional standing is relevant to her credibility. For 20 excruciating minutes, Dr. Collins defended her credentials while the judge allowed the defense to twist her accomplishments into supposed weaknesses. Jurors squirmed. Some avoided her gaze, uncomfortable with the blatant power play unfolding before them. The breaking point came when Dr. Collins requested permission to demonstrate a neurological principle using the medical model she had brought, a visual aid that would make the location of the spinal compression and the consequences of delayed intervention undeniable. Harrison rose abruptly, a looming shadow. This theatrical display is unnecessary and wastes the court's time, he declared. Perhaps in your university classroom you can indulge in such performances, but this is a court of law. He signaled to the bailiff. Remove that prop from the witness stand. The bailiff approached, taking the model from Dr. Collins's hands with deliberate ceremony. A hush fell over the room. Jurors shifted uncomfortably. Yet through it all, she remained still, dignity intact, radiating calm authority. Your Honor, she said softly but firmly, may I approach the bench? Harrison hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. She stepped forward, voice controlled but resonant, loud enough for him and the attorneys to hear. Your repeated interruptions and dismissive comments appear to follow a pattern evident in your previous cases involving female expert witnesses. This pattern could be interpreted as gender bias. The judge's face darkened. Are you threatening me, doctor? Remember where you are and who you are addressing. I'm simply making an observation based on data, Your Honor, she replied evenly. That's what scientists do. Dismissed with a wave, Harrison addressed the court. Due to the late hour and Dr. Collins's clearly limited preparation, we'll adjourn until tomorrow. Perhaps overnight the doctor can organize her thoughts more coherently. As the courtroom emptied, Dr. Collins's phone vibrated in her pocket. She waited until she was alone to check the message. Financial records located. Harrison and Bedford share ownership in 3 investment properties. The pieces of a puzzle, meticulously assembled over years, were falling into place. The hotel room door clicked shut behind her. Only now in private did her professional mask slip. Shoulders released, jaw unclenched. She kicked off her shoes and stood motionless by the window, gazing at Baltimore as darkness settled over the city. 5 minutes. She gave herself exactly 5 minutes to feel the sting of anger, the humiliation, and then the hunt would begin. The clock on her phone ticked down as Amara Collins processed the day's relentless grind, Harrison's sneering comments, the bailiff's deliberate confiscation of her teaching model, the jurors' pitying glances. When the timer beeped, she straightened her spine, shedding fatigue like a discarded cloak, and transformed back into precision, purpose, and determination. She opened her laptop and meticulously arranged the case files in exact order. From a hidden compartment in her briefcase, she retrieved a secure phone, one that contained no stored contacts. Her voice shifted from calm expert witness to commanding authority. "This is Amara Collins," she stated clearly. "Authorization code Sierra Delta 974. "Authentication confirmed," came the immediate response. "Dr. Collins, we've been expecting your call. What did you find?" She leaned in, voice sharper now, every syllable measured. "The financial connections between Harrison and Bedford run deeper than expected." The voice continued. "Beyond the 3 properties they co-own, we've identified a shell company funneling consulting fees from the hospital's parent corporation directly to Harrison's wife's design firm. The transactions are structured to avoid detection in standard disclosure reviews." Dr. Collins scribbled a precise shorthand timeline, the details forming a roadmap of influence and corruption. The financial relationship had begun 8 years ago, shortly after Harrison was assigned to the medical malpractice division. Since then, Bedford had won 92% of his cases before Harrison, far higher than his average with other judges. "And the pattern I suspected," she said, eyes narrowing, "confirmed. We analyzed transcripts from Harrison's last 50 medical malpractice trials," the voice reported. Female expert witnesses received sustained objections at a rate 78% higher than their male counterparts. Their testimony was interrupted an average of 12 times per hour versus 3 times for men with identical credentials. Dr. Collins nodded silently, absorbing the data. "His case reversal rate on appeal? 7 cases overturned in the past decade citing judicial misconduct with gender-biased undertones," the voice continued, "all quietly reassigned with minimal publicity." She exhaled slowly, composed yet now armed with undeniable evidence. "Send everything to my secure server and initiate protocol transparency." "Protocol transparency confirmed," came the swift reply, urgency creeping into the voice. "The oversight committee will be notified. Recording devices are being placed in the courtroom overnight. How would you like to proceed tomorrow?" Amara's eyes glimmered with quiet calculation. "I'll continue as the expert witness they expect for now," she said. "Let them underestimate me a while longer." After ending the call, she reorganized her presentation materials for the next day, slipping in subtle references to case law regarding judicial misconduct, breadcrumbs only those with legal training would notice. She replaced her prominent Harvard pin with a smaller, understated one from the State Bar Association's Ethics Committee, hidden in plain sight. From her suitcase, she retrieved a small leather portfolio. Inside lay an ID card for the Federal Judicial Conduct Review Board, where she served as a special medical advisor. Next to it rested her appointment letter to the State Ethics Commission, signed by the governor 3 years prior. She ran her fingers over these credentials, proof of a career built not just in medicine, but in strategic oversight. Dr. Collins had endured bias, harassment, and skepticism throughout her early career, but she had not merely persevered. She had positioned herself at the intersection of medicine and judicial accountability, focusing specifically on bias in medical malpractice cases. Closing the portfolio, she prepared for bed, mentally rehearsing the next day's strategy. The judge's behavior had already provided ample evidence, but she needed more to ensure a thorough investigation. Tomorrow, she would give him enough rope to hang himself professionally. Her phone chimed. A new message. Additional connection found. Harrison ruled favorably in 3 previous cases involving Bedford's hospital client. All 3 verdicts later questioned but never formally investigated. A faint smile touched her lips. The pieces were falling into place, and she was ready. Tomorrow, Judge Harrison wouldn't be evaluating her credibility. She would be evaluating his. Morning light streamed through the courthouse windows as Dr. Amara Collins took her seat. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Word of yesterday's explosive tensions had traveled fast. The plaintiff's attorney approached, concern etched across her face. "Dr. Collins, after yesterday, I wouldn't blame you for feeling intimidated. Harrison clearly has some issue with you." Amara arranged her notes with steady, unshakable hands. "Trust me, I've handled worse." Weiss blinked, impressed by her poise. Before she could respond, the bailiff called the court to order. Judge Harrison entered immediately, locking eyes with Dr. Collins. Today there was no pretense. His hostility radiated openly. "Before we continue," he began once seated, "I want to remind everyone that this court demands respect and professionalism." His gaze lingered on her. Yesterday's proceedings were disappointing in that regard. Dr. Collins noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small red light on a courtroom camera in the corner. Protocol transparency was active, every word now being recorded for the Oversight Committee. "Dr. Collins," Harrison continued, "I remind you that you are still under oath. Yesterday's performance was lacking both substance and respect for this court. I trust today will be different." Weiss rose immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. That characterization is prejudicial and unfounded." "Overruled," Harrison snapped. "One more outburst like that, counselor, and you'll be held in contempt. Now proceed." The defense attorney resumed cross-examination, each question sharpened with renewed aggression, clearly emboldened by Harrison's bias. "So, Dr. Collins, you spend most of your time in research rather than direct patient care, correct?" "No, that's incorrect," she replied. "My practice is evenly divided between—" "Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive," Bedford interjected. "Sustained," Harrison ruled instantly. "Answer the specific question asked." Dr. Collins adjusted, precise and deliberate. "Approximately 50% of my time involves direct patient care." "So only half your time is actually spent treating patients," Bedford emphasized, twisting her truthful answer into a liability. When she began detailing the standard of care violation, Harrison cut her off again. "The jury will disregard that entire response. You've been warned about offering opinions beyond the scope of the question." Dr. Collins nodded politely, fully aware of the recording. With calculated subtlety, she cited a medical journal she had discovered overnight contained contributions from Harrison's brother-in-law. The Journal of Neurosurgical Standards, in which Dr. Lawrence Keller published his definitive work on spinal cord compression, clearly establishes that delays beyond 6 hours constitute negligence, she stated, her tone innocent but precise. Harrison reacted visibly, face reddening. "That journal is irrelevant to these proceedings." "Your Honor," she replied with practiced calm, "that journal is considered the definitive source on this specific procedure. Is there a reason you find it particularly objectionable?" His face darkened further. "Another comment like that, doctor, and you'll be held in contempt." From the gallery, a man in a gray suit watched intently, taking notes on a small pad. He had arrived early, credentials verified by the bailiff, granting him immediate access. His badge, temporarily tucked inside his jacket, identified him as a representative from the Judicial Review Board. The trap was closing inch by inch, with every biased ruling Harrison made. After the morning recess, the defense called their expert witness. Dr. James Phillips strode to the stand with practiced confidence. Silver-haired, square-jawed, embodying the stereotype of medical authority Harrison revered. "Dr. Phillips," Harrison said warmly, "thank you for accommodating the court with your distinguished presence. We understand how valuable your time is." Dr. Collins watched with clinical detachment. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Where her credentials had been scrutinized, Phillips was praised. Where her answers had been interrupted, his ramble went unchallenged. "In my 30 years at Metropolitan Hospital," Phillips explained at length, "I've never seen a case where a 12-hour delay in this specific procedure resulted in the damage claimed here." Harrison nodded appreciatively. "Thank you for that clarity, Doctor," Phillips continued, relying heavily on anecdote rather than evidence, peppering his testimony with "in my experience," rather than citing scientific literature. When he directly contradicted Dr. Collins's testimony about spinal cord compression standards, Harrison allowed it without question. "Excellent explanation, Doctor," he praised. "Your practical experience illuminates this issue." During cross-examination, Weiss attempted to challenge Phillips on the MRI findings. "Dr. Phillips, wouldn't you agree the imaging shows compression at the C4 to C5 level that meets the criteria for emergency intervention?" "Objection," Bedford interjected, asked and answered during direct examination. "Sustained," Harrison ruled, even though Phillips had never addressed the specific question. When Weiss tried to reference Dr. Collins's earlier testimony on standard medical protocols, the judge cut her off immediately. "We've already heard Dr. Collins's opinions, such as they were. Move on, counselor." Dr. Collins made deliberate eye contact with Harrison as she wrote something in her notebook. For a fleeting moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, quickly masked by renewed hostility. At the plaintiff's table, she passed a note to Weiss. The attorney's eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. The note contained specific language from Judicial Conduct Code, Section 3.5. "A judge shall perform judicial duties without bias or prejudice," along with the case citation Jensen v. State Judicial Commission. The first move in her strategic counterattack was now in motion. The defense presented a series of medical images, with Dr. Phillips offering interpretations that consistently favored the hospital. During a tense exchange over subtle MRI features, Judge Harrison made his most blatant display of bias yet. The court appeared to side with Phillips, swayed by his clinical authority compared to Dr. Collins's meticulous academic expertise. Dr. Collins raised her hand slightly. "Your Honor, may I clarify something for the record?" "If you must, Doctor, but briefly," Harrison snapped. "I'd like the record to show that I have personally performed over 500 of these specific procedures," she said, her tone steady. "While Dr. Phillips, according to his own CV, has performed 37, accuracy matters in testimony." The courtroom fell silent. Phillips shifted uncomfortably. Harrison pounded his gavel. "The court doesn't need commentary on another witness's qualifications." In the gallery, the Judicial Review Board observer made detailed notes. Two more observers, strategically positioned elsewhere in the courtroom, responded silently to the escalation alert triggered by protocol transparency. Harrison remained oblivious, focused entirely on his frustration with Dr. Collins, unaware he was performing for a far more consequential audience. The afternoon marked the final phase of testimony. Dr. Collins returned to the stand for redirect examination. Weiss, now attuned to Dr. Collins's subtle cues, structured her questions to highlight both the doctor's expertise and the judge's bias. "Dr. Collins, can you explain the established medical consensus on spinal compression treatment timelines?" Weiss asked. Before she could respond, Harrison interjected. "Counsel, we've covered this ground extensively." "Your Honor," Weiss countered, The defense expert directly contradicted Dr. Collins' testimony. She deserves the opportunity to address those contradictions. Harrison's jaw tightened. Proceed, but be concise. Dr. Collins delivered a measured, precise response, citing 3 peer-reviewed studies establishing the 6-hour intervention window as standard practice. Each careful statement eroded Harrison's composure further. Dr. Collins, your continued attempts to present yourself as the ultimate authority are testing this court's patience, Harrison spat. Your Honor, I'm simply presenting medical facts, she replied evenly. Facts, according to you, he retorted. This court determines what constitutes a fact. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. One judicial observer typed rapidly on a tablet, flagging the overreach for immediate review. Even Bedford shifted uncomfortably, recognizing Harrison's growing recklessness. During redirect, Bedford attempted to moderate his questions, but Harrison's warning glance immediately hardened the attorney's tone. Dr. Collins, Bedford pressed, isn't it possible that reasonable medical professionals might disagree about these imaging results? When the imaging shows clear compression with neurological symptoms, she responded firmly, the standard of care is unequivocal. This is defined in the American Association of Neurological Surgeons Procedural Guidelines, Section 4.3. 2. Regarding cervical compression with progressive neurological deficit. Harrison interrupted. Dr. Collins, please avoid unnecessarily technical jargon. She tilted her head slightly. Your Honor, would you prefer I use layman-s terms or legally precise medical definitions as required by State Code 47.3 for expert testimony? The reference, one Harrison should have known, caused him to flush with anger. Are you questioning my understanding of the law, Doctor? Not at all, Your Honor. I'm seeking clarification on your preference for my testimony. Harrison rose, looming over her. What I prefer is a witness who knows her place. The statement hung in the air, naked in its bias. One judicial observer quietly exited, phone in hand. In the gallery, the chief observer made a final notation and closed his portfolio. Dr. Collins remained composed, gaze steady. And what place would that be, Your Honor? She asked softly, deliberately. Bedford jumped. Objection! The witness is being argumentative. Sustained! Harrison barked. Dr. Collins, you are dangerously close to contempt, Weiss intervened. Your Honor, may we approach the bench? Not necessary, Harrison snapped. This court will take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I expect a different attitude from all parties. As he rose, the bailiff handed him a folded note. Harrison read it, expression shifting from annoyance to concern, color draining from his face. The wheels of justice were beginning to turn against him. The courtroom reconvened after 30 minutes, twice the announced recess time. Whispers spread among the spectators. Harrison returned, visibly shaken, his earlier arrogance replaced by stiff formality. Weiss leaned toward Dr. Collins. What's happening? Justice, she replied simply. Before proceedings continued, the bailiff handed Harrison another note. His complexion paled further. Clearing his throat, he announced, "This court will recess for an additional 30 minutes." As he hurried from the courtroom, Dr. Collins noticed a new presence, one that would tighten the net around the judge's misconduct even further. The district's chief judge entered silently, taking a seat in the back row. His expression was grave, eyes scanning the proceedings like a hawk. Two others in formal attire followed, carrying portfolios stamped with the state seal, their presence unmistakably official. When Judge Harrison returned, he no longer walked with the commanding arrogance he had worn like armor. Now he moved like a man anticipating an impact he couldn't control. The chief judge joined him briefly at the bench, their conversation terse and intense, before taking an unprecedented seat in the gallery's front row. Harrison cleared his throat. Before we continue, I feel I should clarify some of my earlier statements regarding Dr. Collins's testimony. This court has the utmost respect for all expert witnesses regardless of background. The forced retraction came too late. Dr. Collins rose from her seat, spine straight, gaze unwavering. "Your Honor, if I may address the court." Harrison hesitated, already sensing the tide had turned. The chief judge watched with silent intensity, signaling that normal procedures had been suspended. Dr. Collins approached the bench, but instead of stopping there, she turned to face the entire courtroom. From her briefcase, she retrieved a different set of credentials. Not her medical license, but an official ID card bearing the state seal and the federal judiciary emblem. "My name is Dr. Amara Collins," she announced, voice calm but commanding. "While I am a practicing neurologist and expert in medical malpractice cases, I also serve as the appointed special medical advisor to the Federal Judicial Conduct Review Board, focusing specifically on bias in the evaluation of medical testimony." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Harrison gripped his gavel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Bedford, the defense attorney, began gathering papers as if preparing to flee. "For the past 3 years," Dr. Collins continued, her voice unwavering, "I have been conducting authorized reviews of judicial conduct in medical malpractice cases across this circuit. Your courtroom was scheduled for routine observation. However, upon reviewing your case history before my appearance, I identified concerning patterns that warranted closer investigation. Your treatment of my testimony these past 2 days has, unfortunately, confirmed those patterns." The chief judge stood. "As of this moment, these proceedings are temporarily suspended. Judge Taryn Harrison is recused from this case pending a full investigation into judicial misconduct." Harrison found his voice, but it lacked its former power. "This is outrageous. You deliberately misrepresented yourself." "No, Your Honor," Dr. Collins interrupted calmly. "My credentials as a medical expert are genuine and complete. I was not obligated to disclose my position with the review board during a formal investigation. Doing so would have compromised the integrity of our findings." She addressed the stunned courtroom. "When I whispered that authorization code yesterday, Sierra Delta 974, it activated protocol transparency, our highest level of judicial misconduct investigation." The observers, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the proceedings, now revealed their credentials. Members of the Judicial Review Board stepped forward to document Harrison's conduct firsthand. Bedford attempted to slip out, but a federal marshal appeared at the door. "Mr. Bedford," the marshal said firmly, "we'll need to speak with you regarding your undisclosed financial relationships with Judge Harrison." The plaintiff sat in stunned silence, witnessing justice unfold in a way no one could have predicted. Weiss, the plaintiff's attorney, struggled to maintain her composure, though a subtle smile betrayed her satisfaction. Dr. Collins returned to her seat and opened her laptop, revealing dozens of similar cases flagged for investigation. Many involved the same defense firm and hospital. The screen displayed a detailed database tracking patterns of rulings across multiple judges. Harrison's name highlighted in red. Every biased ruling, every dismissive comment, had been another nail in his professional coffin. The story broke like a summer storm. By evening, reporters swarmed the courthouse, media vans creating a perimeter around the building. Local news flashed the headline, "Judge exposed by expert he humiliated." By midnight, national outlets had picked up the story. Inside the chief judge's chambers, Dr. Collins presented her findings to a hastily assembled panel of judicial administrators. Every page, every annotation, every recorded instance of bias confirmed what the courtroom had just witnessed. Justice had been served, not by chance, but by precision, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. The evidence formed a damning constellation. Statistical analyses revealing Harrison's clear pattern of gender bias, financial records documenting undisclosed conflicts of interest, and courtroom recordings capturing his contemptuous treatment of female experts. "We've been tracking Judge Harrison's rulings for 36 months, Dr. Collins explained, navigating detailed spreadsheets on her laptop. The pattern had emerged early, but meticulous documentation ensured irrefutable accuracy. She displayed a color-coded chart highlighting ruling disparities. Over the past 3 years, Judge Harrison ruled against female expert testimony at a rate 84% higher than male experts with identical credentials, she stated. In medical malpractice cases specifically, when the expert was a woman, he issued favorable rulings to this particular hospital in 92% of cases. A judicial administrator leaned forward. "And you're certain these statistics control for other variables?" "Absolutely," Dr. Collins confirmed. "We matched cases by type, severity, evidence quality, and attorney experience levels. Gender bias remained the only statistically significant factor." The chief judge reviewed the financial documents with growing concern. Undisclosed property investments with defense attorney Bedford, connections to the hospital board through his wife's family business. "Yes," Dr. Collins affirmed, "a clear violation of judicial ethics requiring recusal. We've identified 27 cases in the past 5 years where these conflicts should have been disclosed." Down the hall, the hospital's general counsel sat across from the plaintiff's attorney. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Where once they had fought the malpractice claim aggressively, now settlement papers slid across the table with barely concealed desperation. "Our client deserves fair compensation for their suffering," Weiss stated firmly, shaking the offer back. "This figure is inadequate, especially in light of recent revelations." "Then what number would resolve this quickly and confidentially?" the hospital counsel pressed. "Confidentiality is no longer an option," Weiss replied, eyes steely. "Any settlement must include public acknowledgement of the Hospital AS failures and the implementation of new safety protocols." Meanwhile, Bedford law firm descended into chaos. Thomas Bedford faced an emergency partner meeting as junior attorneys demanded explanations for the financial entanglements with Harrison. 3 partners resigned immediately, emailing clients before Bedford could begin damage control. "This wasn't just unethical, it was stupid," one departing partner told reporters. "He compromised everything we built for a guaranteed advantage in court." Forensic accountants dove into Bedford's financial records, tracing a complex web of shell companies and consulting arrangements designed to conceal influence between the law firm, the judge, and hospital leadership. Dr. Collins met with the original plaintiff, a former construction worker now partially paralyzed due to the hospital's negligence. For 3 years, his case had been delayed and dismissed across courts, his life deteriorating while justice remained elusive. "Your case became the catalyst," Dr. Collins explained gently. "But you weren't the only one. We've identified 27 similar cases where justice was denied, potentially due to the same pattern of bias and financial conflicts." The plaintiff's eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted them to admit they made a mistake. I never thought it would uncover all this." A class action lawsuit began to form as other patients with similar experiences stepped forward. Their stories followed a pattern. Cases before Judge Harrison, female expert witnesses dismissed, favorable rulings for the hospital despite overwhelming evidence of negligence. The hospital IS stock price plummeted 15% in a single trading day as investors reacted to potential liability. The board convened an emergency session, replacing their general counsel and initiating an internal investigation into ties with Bedford law firm and Judge Harrison. Within the judicial system itself, a comprehensive review launched. Other judges with connections to Harrison found their past rulings scrutinized. 2 recused themselves from current medical malpractice cases, sensing the changing tide. Bedford law firm issued a carefully worded press release. "We are shocked by these allegations and have placed Mr. Bedford on indefinite leave pending investigation. Our firm remains committed to the highest ethical standards." Behind closed doors, the remaining partners scrambled to distance themselves from Bedford's actions, aware that the scandal had rattled the foundations of the courtroom, the hospital, and the legal system itself. Dr. Amara Collins leaned over during a brief recess. "I'm sorry about this. Harrison has a reputation for being old school, Weiss whispered. I've noticed, Dr. Collins replied calmly. But don't worry. I've dealt with this type of behavior throughout my career. What neither the judge nor anyone else realized was that Dr. Collins had developed more than patience during those years of facing bias. A familiar name on the court docket, connected to her past in ways that would soon shatter Judge Harrison's world. The trial began with brisk opening statements. Dr. Collins sat at the witness table with perfect posture, her expression neutral despite the tension crackling through the courtroom. When Weiss called her to the stand, Judge Harrison's mouth tightened into a thin line. Dr. Collins, please state your qualifications for the record, Weiss began. Before she could answer, Harrison interjected. We've already established the witness's background during pre-trial. Let's not waste the court's time. Dr. Collins maintained her composure as she was sworn in. The oath felt heavier than usual under Harrison's cold stare. She guided the court through her initial testimony about the patient's condition and the hospital's critical errors. The MRI clearly showed early signs of pressure on the spinal cord that required immediate surgical intervention, she explained. The 12-hour delay violated basic standards of care. Harrison's interruptions were constant. He dismissed her peer-reviewed research, scolded her attempts to clarify the medical timeline, and even had a bailiff remove a model she had brought to illustrate spinal compression. During a recess, Dr. Collins overheard Harrison speaking with Bedford. These academics think they know everything, Harrison sneered. Collins retrieved her phone and activated a secure channel. This is Collins. I need information on Judge Taryn Harrison's judicial record, particularly cases involving female expert witnesses. Also, check the ownership records of Bedford Holdings from 2018 to present. With a code whispered, Sierra Delta 974, protocol transparency was activated and machinery began moving. The afternoon session intensified. Objections came faster than answers. Harrison sustained nearly every objection, effectively gutting Dr. Collins's testimony. Even so, she remained composed, deliberately citing journals, legal codes, and her extensive surgical experience. Every biased interruption, every dismissive comment was being recorded. Unnoticed by Harrison, observers from the Judicial Conduct Review Board quietly documented the trial, prepared to act. The following morning, Dr. Collins returned to court, deliberately watching a red light glow on a courtroom camera. Protocol transparency was active. Every word would be reviewed. She strategically cited a journal authored by Harrison's brother-in-law. He flushed with anger, unaware that the trap was closing. Meanwhile, the defense's expert, Dr. James Phillips, delivered long-winded testimony, praised for experience, even as he contradicted Collins's precise clinical knowledge. She corrected discrepancies subtly, leaving a breadcrumb trail of legal codes and standards that would not go unnoticed. Harrison's arrogance continued until observers arrived in force. The district's chief judge entered silently, followed by two officials with state-sealed portfolios. When Harrison returned, his confidence had evaporated. Collins presented her credentials not just as a neurologist, but as a special medical advisor to the Federal Judicial Conduct Review Board, revealing the investigation underway. Your treatment of my testimony these past 2 days confirms concerning patterns, she told Harrison calmly. The court was stunned. Harrison was recused on the spot, and federal marshals moved in on Bedford. In the following days, forensic accountants and investigators uncovered the depth of Harrison and Bedford's misconduct. Offshore accounts, shell companies, and nearly $350,000 in undisclosed payments over 8 years. Encrypted emails revealed deliberate efforts to favor certain witnesses and discredit others. Dr. Collins continued to testify in the rescheduled malpractice trial while consulting with the review board. Each statistical chart, financial record, and courtroom recording reinforced a damning case. The gender bias was undeniable. Harrison had consistently undermined female expert witnesses while rewarding the favored hospital and attorney. 6 weeks later, Harrison sat before the Judicial Conduct Committee. His once commanding presence diminished. Dr. Collins presented the evidence clinically, charts and color-coded timelines showing 15 years of bias and financial entanglement. His defense crumbled. The committee swiftly recommended immediate removal from the bench, referral for disbarment, and criminal investigation. Harrison fled the courthouse under media scrutiny. His reputation disintegrated in real time. Across the state, reforms rolled out. Courts implemented bias monitoring software to track anomalies in rulings. Mandatory bias training emphasized gender disparities in expert witness evaluation. Financial disclosure rules expanded to cover family and indirect connections. Independent review boards were empowered to investigate patterns without risking contempt. Metropolitan Hospital restructured its board, including patient advocates, ensuring transparent review processes. Bedford law firm dissolved, and former clients pursued malpractice claims against it. Dr. Collins became a public voice for judicial integrity. At the state judicial conference, she addressed hundreds of judges, illustrating how the Harrison case revealed systemic vulnerabilities. Her algorithms and methodology were now used to flag potential bias across courts nationwide. 1 year later, Dr. Collins accepted the American Bar Association's special citation for contributions to judicial integrity. As she addressed the audience, she reflected. "A year ago, I stood in a courtroom being deliberately humiliated for challenging a corrupt status quo. Today, I stand here because the same system has the capacity to heal itself when enough people demand better." Her work continued, blending neurology, legal oversight, and data-driven accountability, ensuring that the scales of justice tilted toward integrity rather than unchecked power. 3 universities have created fellowship programs based on her interdisciplinary approach. Former Judge Harrison's legacy serves as a cautionary tale in ethics classes at law schools nationwide. His case study appears in judicial training materials, stripped of any remaining prestige. After pleading guilty to reduced charges of corruption, he serves community service at the same hospital he once protected, assisting patients who struggle with the medical system. Accountability doesn't always mean punishment, Dr. Collins explains when asked about Harrison's sentence. Sometimes it means redirecting someone's energy toward healing the very systems they damaged. The original plaintiff from the malpractice case has used part of their settlement to establish a patient advocacy foundation, with Dr. Collins serving on its advisory board. Together, they help vulnerable patients navigate complex medical and legal systems, ensuring their voices are heard. The greatest injustice was that it took 3 years for this patient to receive proper compensation, Dr. Collins notes during a foundation meeting. "Our goal is to make sure no one else waits that long for justice." The courtroom where it all began has been reformed as well. The new judge appointed to replace Harrison, a woman with both legal and medical credentials, has established a reputation for fair treatment of all expert witnesses, evaluating testimony on merit rather than gender or status. Dr. Collins occasionally returns to that courtroom as an expert witness, always pausing for a moment of reflection as she takes the stand. The experience has neither hardened nor embittered her. Instead, it has reinforced her belief in systems of accountability and the power of speaking truth even when your voice shakes. Her office at the University Medical Center has expanded to include a small team dedicated to monitoring judicial bias in medical cases nationwide. On her desk sits a small plaque with words that have become her personal motto and the title of her upcoming book on judicial reform, Justice Sees Through Bias. The case that began with humiliation has transformed into a movement for accountability that continues to spread across the legal and medical professions. Dr. Collins doesn't consider herself an activist, just a professional unwilling to accept that some voices deserve less respect than others. In medicine, we're taught to treat the underlying condition, not just the symptoms, she explains to a student who asks about her approach. Bias isn't just a personal failing, it's a systemic disease that requires systemic treatment. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, hit that like button right now. Your support helps Fate Tales bring more powerful tales of accountability to light. These aren't just stories, they're reminders that speaking truth to power changes lives. Subscribe to Fate Tales for a new, compelling drama every week. Stories of ordinary people with extraordinary courage who expose corruption and transform broken systems. This story shouldn't be the exception. It should be the last time it ever happens. At Fate Tales, we turn one moment of injustice into a call for change. Subscribe to help make that call louder and longer lasting.